Welcome to the Legal Insurrection Podcast. I'm Kimberly Kay with the Legal Insurrection Foundation, and I'm here with our president and founder, William Jacobson. This is our 32nd episode, and we have quite a bit to discuss today. We'll be discussing the whole dust up with the Heritage Foundation and their embracement of Tucker Carlson, what happened in New York City, who seems to have forgotten 9/11, and other elections that happened around the country, along with the California redistricting madness. So let's go ahead and jump in. I know that, Bill, you have had a lot to say about what's going on with Tucker. I think a little background here is important, though, um, because for a very long time, you appeared on Tucker's show when he was still on Fox News. In fact, your last long form appearance when you went to Florida and interviewed in his compound was right before he was kicked off of Fox News, which is actually kind of funny because it's still like the last tweet pinned on that account, or it was, if it's still up. So this is someone who we have dealt with for years, over the course of the time of the blog. But that's changed because it seems like his outlook on many things has changed, concerningly so. So I think maybe first we talk about what's happening there with him and some of the things that he seems to embrace, and then of course why Heritage getting involved in all of this mess is a problem.
And so I think one of the reasons so many people feel so strongly about Tucker 2.0 is that we remember Tucker 1.0. And I remember him, and I've expressed many times on the website and elsewhere how appreciative I was of the help he gave us. I was on his show, Tucker Carlson Tonight, which was the primetime show, I think 6 or 8 times, could have been more, but let's say 6 to 8 times. A lot of people saw me on that, and a lot of people would come up to me and say, "Oh, I love watching you on Tucker all the time." I said, "Well, I'm not really on all the time, maybe every few months," but it seemed to people it was all the time. I was on there many times about Elizabeth Warren, about the Gibson's Bakery versus Oberlin College case. We launched criticalrace.org on his show in early February 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And by midnight, we got 400,000 hits to the website, got 1 million by the next day. We launched Equal Protection Project, which is equalprotect.org, on his show in February 2023, not long before he was fired. I appeared on Tucker Carlson Today as opposed to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker Carlson Today was the Fox Nation show that he had where he would basically do hour-long
Right.
interviews with people. And I flew down there, visited his studio. They had a whole studio for him on the island where he lives. Got to spend a little time with him a little before and after the segment, plus obviously almost an hour in the segment. And I remember coming back and saying to people, he is in person exactly like he is on TV. There's no two people. And so I felt a great deal of gratitude towards him. I felt ideological alignment with him. He was a little edgy, but not too edgy for me. Maybe too edgy for some people. We would build our evenings around watching his monologues because they were absolutely brilliant. Much in the way I used to build my driving time around the Rush Limbaugh show so I could be in the car to listen to Rush. And so I had only affection for him. And after he left, I texted him and wished him well. Having his cell phone number and text is no big deal. Everybody seems to have it. So it's not like I was special. Okay. He's notorious for just texting with everybody. I wished him well, told him, whatever happens, we'll stand by you. And I think I even wrote that at the blog. And then something happened. Tucker 2.0 turned in a very strange direction. Started with him, I think his first interview or second was with the Tate brothers, kind of building them up. And I'm thinking, okay, this is strange, but whatever, okay. But then really, I think for me, Tucker turned negative after October 7th, 2023, after the massacre,
Right.
where something broke his brain, in my estimation, like it did a lot of people. And he turned on Israel. In my estimation, he turned on the Jews. something happened with him and a lot of other people. And for me, the turning point with him was not long. I think it might have been December 2023. I might be off on the month, but it was relatively close to October 7th, where he lashes out at Ben Shapiro. First of all, he platforms Candace Owens to attack Ben Shapiro. And while Candace wasn't as, you know, vile as she is now, she was already vile, okay? Not at the level she is now, but she was pretty vile. That's why she was fighting with Ben Shapiro and others. And so he platforms her to do that. And then he rips into Ben Shapiro. And I think more generally, I don't remember his precise words, but it clearly was more generally towards Israel supporters, particularly American
Right.
Jews, personified by Ben Shapiro, saying, why are you worrying so much about Israel's border? Why aren't you worrying about the US border? And he suggests the old dual loyalty thing, the old disloyalty thing, that we're not loyal. Of course, you can worry about both, okay? They're not one
Right.
or the other, you know. And of course, then he runs off to Moscow and other places worrying about their border, not ours. But, and that, and he, you know, lashed out in ways that I considered to be mocking, that I considered to be belittling towards the emotional response. Why are people so emotional? I don't understand why they're so emotional, in kind of Tucker tone of voice. And I really felt that this is somebody who is kicking us while we're down. This is somebody who's mocking us while we're down. This is like the people, if you've seen either the photos or the accounts of like the pogroms in Eastern Europe. There were the people who carried them out and would drag half naked Jewish women through the streets. And then there were the people on the sidewalks who mocked. Okay. And he
Right.
was one of those people on the sidewalk who mocked. And that was the turning point for me. And I've written that, I've said that, tweeted that out to my very limited following, that it's unforgivable what he did. And that's where I broke with him, that you're entitled to your opinion, you're entitled to disagree with me, etc. But in our lowest moment in 50 to 60 years, you mocked us, you belittled us, and you took the side of the people who were tormenting us. And I will not forgive him. I will never forgive him for that. And he's only gotten worse since late 2023. And so that's kind of the background. I mean, he's, in my estimation, and other people have said this, I'm not the only one to say it, he has normalized anti Semitism. There was a great
Right.
article by someone named Rod Dreyer talking about uh, the malicious conduct of Tucker. And Rod Dreyer related conversations he had had within a few days of writing his article recently. And he said, every single conservative Jew I've spoken to has said the same thing. Tucker is the most dangerous person in the United States for American Jews because he has normalized anti Semitism. He has normalized neo Nazism. He has normalized these pathologies. And that's kind of my view. If you are a Nazi historical revisionist, like the guy he had on his show, who says
Yeah.
Churchill was the bad guy in World War II. Hitler was just misunderstood. I'm obviously paraphrasing. Hitler was just misunderstood. He found himself in a situation where he had all these Jewish refugees and he didn't know what to do with them, and he never really wanted to kill them. Okay, just complete insanity. And that gets whitewashed, that gets laundered through the Tucker show. Tucker nods. Oh, this is the most honest living historian, I believe, is the way he described him. Um, and he's done that with a lot of people. And he made it okay to bring Nazism back. He made it okay to espouse these things. It had the Tucker stamp of approval. And that's really where things exploded on the internet, because people said, well, if it's being aired on Tucker's show with his 8 million viewers or however many he has and his 17 million Twitter followers and his podcast, which is top 10. If it's okay for Tucker to do this, you know what? Maybe that's also a good business strategy, because that's how Tucker's rebuilding his empire. And so all of the things that have happened uh, are really, I don't think people fully understand how deep the resentment is um, among Jews in general, but American conservative Jews in particular, because he is trying to do to us what the left did, what the progressive movement did to Jews, in to left wing Jews, which is your price of admission if you are Jewish is you must pledge allegiance not to Israel, but to being anti Israel. That's the only acceptable. And if you're pro Israel, you're not going to be one of us. And that's what he's trying to do in the conservative movement. It's already been done in the left wing movement. Been a lot of complaints about that. And so uh, Tucker is particularly resented. And that brings us kind of fast forward to the Turning Point USA situation and to the Charlie Kirk
Hmm.
situation. The fight that Charlie Kirk was having with donors, and there have been various accounts, but there's no question, it seems, that there were disputes, was not over Israel, it was over Tucker, that
Right.
Jewish donors who gave Turning Point USA its start, just like they gave Candace Owens her start, okay, David Horowitz Center, etc. Uh, they said, we're not going to fund you if you're putting Tucker on stage, and when he gets on stage, he just bashes Israel and he mocks
Hmm.
Jews and he mocks Israel. We're not going to fund you. That was what the fight at Turning Point was not about Israel. It was about Tucker. And I don't think people really understand how deep that feeling is. And for me, it's that deep because he mocked us after October 7th. He laughed at us, he belittled us, and then he turned on us. So that's where we are. That's kind of the background that I have with Tucker. And I
Hmm.
wish it wasn't that way. I wish it wasn't that way.
I mean, it's a trust that was broken because I think if you are someone who just happens to listen to podcasts, whether you listen to ours, hopefully you do if you're listening now, um, or if whomever it is that you enjoy consuming news and discussion and debate from, he broke a trust, a long-standing trust. He was kind of a pillar in conservative media for a very long time, having helped to start the Daily Caller in the Clinton years, I mean, so he's been around for a really long time and had done a tremendous amount of good and really helped to kind of bring the conservative blogosphere into what it ultimately became with the Daily Caller. It was a very large platform that offered an alternative point of view at a time when all of the media was drooling over President Clinton. And, so then to have someone who comes from that then builds a really great performance or whatever it was that he was doing on Fox News because one of his particular skills is his ability to eviscerate someone if he wants to, is to lead them into a wonderful rhetorical trap. And we've seen him do this how many times, in the interviews that he had on his Fox primetime show, which to me is part of why it's inexcusable what he's done in platforming some of these people because it's not like he brought this character Nick Fuentes who it's hard to believe that this is a real individual because if you watch anything that he says it's so outrageous, so vile and so crazy. I struggle to understand how anyone takes him seriously. And yet, Tucker gives him a platform to promote these overt Nazi ideas. Like, this is not at all hyperbole. I realize that the internet has kind of ruined that for us, calling people Nazis and fascists and things like this. He literally talks about the Nazis and how they had things right. And he talks about all of these things. He's incredibly horrible when it comes to women. I mean, just anything that you think might be right, he disagrees with. And rather than bringing him on to expose this kid for his terrible ideas, for how damaging they can be, he promotes them. And ultimately, that was the last straw for many people who were already on the fence about what is he doing here. I think a lot of people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he'd wandered off the beaten path a little bit. Maybe he's just trying to give some airtime to these alternative voices, but it's pretty clear that's not at all what's happening now. I mean, like you, I abandoned ship long ago. But I think for many people, that was the last straw. You cannot be someone who says that you are on the side of things conservative and right leaning and protecting the vulnerable and doing this, and yet platform people who say these horrendous things and believe these horrendous things, and then draw other people who are dealing with trauma or vulnerabilities of their own into this way of thinking that then ends up harming and marginalizing other populations. And in this case, it would be the Jewish population. It's incredibly dangerous. It's not something where it's just we disagree on tax policy here, or maybe we disagree on the amount of foreign aid that should be sent somewhere. This is legitimately dangerous what he's doing. And I think many people see that now, especially this post Nick Fuentes thing, that may not have fully wanted to latch on to what was happening before.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worse than that. He's become a chaos agent. He's become
Yes.
somebody who is really tearing apart the MAGA coalition. And I use the term coalition deliberately there. Donald Trump obviously had the force of his personality. I mean, once in a lifetime politician and businessman, but he didn't win it alone. He won it by putting together groups who may not in the past have worked together. The MAGA coalition was record high numbers of non-whites voting for Trump, whether it's blacks or Hispanics or Indian Americans, as opposed to American Indians, Jewish Americans. He built a coalition, and Tucker is systematically ripping that coalition apart. He's already
Right.
jettisoned or trying to jettison Jews from the coalition. He's jettisoned, or his supporters have jettisoned Indians, Indian Americans from that coalition. About 2 months
Anyone
ago, a
of
month or
color.
two ago,
Yeah.
anyone about a month or two ago, an absolutely vicious online campaign by his supporters against, wrapped into the whole visa situation, attacking Indians.
Right.
He is now going after uh, Christian Zionists. Now, I claim no knowledge of Christian theology, but apparently he has touched a nerve, okay? Because this concept of Christian Zionists being heretics. I'm not even understanding why, but that's my ignorance. But that's apparently a thing, okay? Because people are now fighting over that. So he not only sets Christians against Jews, he sets whites against non-whites. He sets Christians against Christians. He is
Yes.
single-handedly like a destructive wrecking crew to the Donald Trump MAGA coalition. And I don't think that's to blame for the recent elections that we'll talk about, but it's going to
I
be a
agree.
problem. It's going to be a major, major problem because, contrary to what Tucker and his acolytes might think, white Christian nationalists cannot win an election alone. Okay, there just aren't enough of them. So if that's what the MAGA coalition is going to become, which appears to be what he wants it to become, it is electoral disaster for the rest of our lifetimes. We will live under Zora Mandami at a national level if that's what we become. And a lot of people are waking up to it. And that kind of gets us to the present, where while people are fighting with Tucker online and elsewhere, objecting to Tucker. Remember, Tucker's the one who, the second Charlie Kirk was assassinated, what does Tucker start talking about? Oh, he was fighting with Bibi Netanyahu. He would, so
Yes.
not coming right out and saying it. See, he's in many ways a dishonest version of Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens. They come
Yes.
right out and
100%.
say stuff. He intimates at it. He suggests it. He's just asking questions. And
Yes.
so
He
if you remember the
breadcrumbs
time,
people into saying the things he won't out loud.
that's right.
And he
That's right.
purposely, I believe, purposely has them on to say the things that he will not himself confess as things that he believes.
And that's why people believe he's so destructive, is because he does it through his guests. He's just asking questions, okay? Just asking questions about, the JFK assassination and 9/11. And oh, by the way, did you hear about those Israeli art students who were in New York during 9? Well, I'm not accusing them of being involved, but am I not allowed to ask questions about Israeli art students in New York around the time of 9/11? Well, why are you asking those questions? You have no answers. We know
Right.
exactly what you're doing, Tucker. You're not kidding anybody. But there are a lot of kids who don't know exactly what he's doing. He really has
Right.
turned a portion of the younger, disgruntled population against Israel with these conspiracy theories about APAC having babysitters for Congress. APAC are Americans, not just Jews. In fact, Americans
Hmm.
United for or Christians United for Israel. There are a lot of Christian groups involved with APAC. It's not just Jewish, but it appears to be Jewish, and so he gets a lot of play out of that. And he's got helpers. He's got Thomas Massey and others. Oh, the influence of APAC. And, it's the placard strategy. Placard strategy is something the left uses. They don't give you a position paper on something with an explanation. Their position has to fit on a placard. Okay.
Right.
The Palestinians do it. Apartheid Israel, genocide, all these terms that can fit on a placard. And that's what he does. APAC, control, we're subservient, et cetera, et cetera. And so that has been brewing. And then he brings on Nick Fuentes. So Nick Fuentes to me is a distraction because this was a fight over the future of the Republican Party involving Tucker that existed before Nick Fuentes went on his show. And so and the Nick Fuentes interview was another one where mostly it's just Tucker just asking questions, uh, sanitizing this guy. Um,
Hmm.
and then for reasons unknown, okay, the Heritage Foundation decides to jump into this fight. And it's like, in hindsight, what dog did you have in this fight? What were you doing? Why did the president, Kevin Roberts, feel the need to jump out and defend Tucker Carlson? It's bizarre. He seems to have some sort of sway over people. I don't know if there's financial ties. I don't know if there's other things, but they jump into it and they literally say Tucker is forever our friend. It's like, why don't you just shut up? There's no reason as an institution. Okay, you want to have your personal opinions, that's fine. There was no reason as an institution that the Heritage Foundation needed to get involved in this, but they did. And so now that this whole emotion erupted forward, and I think a lot of people are looking at it and saying, well, that's an overreaction to him just interviewing somebody. And if that's all you knew about it, I could understand that viewpoint. But there's been
Right.
2 years. This has been building for 2 years. Okay. And then there has been, other people who've chimed in. Oh, you're trying to squelch his free speech. No, we're criticizing. He's entitled to
Yes.
fluff, Nick Fuentes, and we're entitled to criticize it. And we're entitled to criticize the Heritage Foundation, where as an institution, it says, okay, Tucker Carlson is our best friend forever. I mean, literally, that's close to
Right.
the words he said. Okay, like he's our BFF, and we don't care if he's got this
Exactly.
neo-Nazi on. He's our BFF now, and he's going to be our BFF forever. Okay, and so
Right.
why did you jump into this? And then everything just exploded because in the interview with Fuentes is when Tucker said, "I hate Christian Zionism more than anybody." Okay, and where Fuentes complains about the main problem in the U.S. is, I think the term he used was organized Jewry or Jewish organization, not Jewish organization. It was organized Jewry is our big problem. Really no substantive pushback. And as Kimberly indicated, Tucker is a guy who, in an interview, when he wants to, can rip somebody apart. Okay. Just like Megyn Kelly can. And so you're
Right.
doing softball interviews with 8 to 10 to 12 to 20 horrific guests, okay, including a Cornell professor who I know. I don't know him well, but I know him, who says, well, an argument can be made that we should have sided with Hitler, not Stalin, in World War II. and Tucker's just nodding along. So when he
Mm-hmm.
wants to be tough on somebody, he can be, but that's not what he's been doing. He was tough on Ted Cruz. If anybody saw that Ted Cruz interview, he ripped into Ted Cruz. And if you only saw the clips that were leaked by the Tucker Carlson network, whose CEO is also the publisher of the Daily Caller. That's something that hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been explored. Okay. Um, that the guy who is the publisher and co-founder of the Daily Caller is the CEO of Tucker Carlson network, pushing all this crap out the door through that network. That's not been explored. That really needs to be explored and exposed. But the point is that when he wants to, he can do that. He could have brought these people on and did a serious interview of them, but that's not what he
Right.
does. And so he's entitled to his free speech. He's entitled to platform whoever he wants, and we're entitled to call him out on it, and we're entitled to say, Heritage, what in the world are you doing? Why are you making this guy the face of the Heritage Foundation, an institution? I don't know how many decades they've been around, 50, 60 years, whatever it is,
Right.
really a mainstay of the conservative movement. An organization, while we haven't had a ton of interaction with, I've had some with them. They've always been very nice people. I've never had
Yes.
a complaint. I mean, maybe a little bit more establishment than we are, okay, but that's what they are. But I've never had an issue with anybody at the Heritage Foundation. Why are you making Tucker Carlson the face of your organization? Is there any adult supervision here? Where is the board of trustees? You have an institutional interest that goes beyond Kevin Roberts' bizarro friendship with Tucker and allegiance to Tucker Carlson. What is going on
Yeah.
here? So he's not only corrupting the MAGA movement and destroying it, he's also corrupting and destroying the Heritage Foundation. Now, I don't think it's going to be destroyed. I don't think it's going to go out of business, but this is a major blow to them. They've lost people,
That's
they've
one of
lost credibility.
yes. I mean, it's one of the worst things that I can remember in my entire existence in the conservative sphere, which is probably like 15 years now, to have happened to the Heritage Foundation and by their own choosing, and it's a huge misstep. One of the things I want to backtrack slightly and talk about is from a Christian perspective on this, right? Because one of the things that weighs very heavily on me, and it's the largest issue I have with both Tucker and Candace Owens, who, as we've discussed, are just saying and platforming insane things, like objectively insane things. I don't have a problem with people asking questions. I don't believe that whatever guy they said shot Charlie Kirk is probably the guy that shot Charlie Kirk. It all seems very sus to me. I'm fine with that, right? What I do know, though, is when things are under investigation, you're not going to have all of the evidence put forth in front of you, right? That's just not how these things work. The FBI is not going to get on Twitter and post every little thing that's going on in an investigation in real time. That's not how things work. There's something to be said about asking questions, but as you mentioned, these people ask questions for which they have no evidence. They have um no answer to. So what they do successfully though is they get people to question everything to such a degree that you believe nothing. Because there are crazy people that do crazy things. It is possible, although I don't think likely, it's possible that the guy they arrested is the guy that actually shot Charlie Kirk. And they may have evidence to prove that we are not that we don't have access to at this point. So I don't have a problem with asking questions. I think it's entirely tacky. I think it says much of their character to immediately jump on this before Charlie is even, in the ground. Tucker used his memorial service to trash the Jews. He took his slot at the memorial service to throw shade at the Jewish people, which was completely off color, completely unacceptable. And one of the things that I have watched happen over the last couple of months, which I find incredibly concerning, is that they have successfully planted the idea among many Christians and among just people in general that it's okay to dislike or hate Israel, but that you can still somehow support the Jewish people while also hating Israel. Because if they believe that Israel is behind all of the bad things that happen in the world, which if you just put a pause on that and say it out loud is just crazy. Like, we're gonna blame the Jews for all the bad things that happen? Come on, that's exactly what this is in different words. And I have watched on social media, which I'm glad is not necessarily reflective of real life, but I have watched, very concerningly so many people believe that it's possible to make that distinction. And I know it's something I ask Bill about a lot more frequently now, anytime that we have an opportunity to discuss this, because I think it's something people need to hear. There is no distinguishing between being anti Israel and being anti Jewish. It is the Jewish state of Israel. It exists solely for the purpose that the Jewish people have a protected place on the planet. So you cannot say that you support the Jewish people while also hating the Jewish state of Israel. But they have successfully encouraged people in this thinking. And it's wrong. And I will tell you now, it is wrong. You cannot believe both things. It does not track logically. It is wrong thinking. It will take you to a very, very dangerous place. Because, and I wrote about this the other day, but what do you think this paves the ground for? If they can get you to start distancing yourself from Israel, if they can get you to start distancing yourself from the Jewish people because they support the state of Israel, obviously, why would they not? Then what? I mean, what agenda are you really perpetrating here? And I think that's really where this all leads back to. There are definitely certain ideologies, whether it's Nazism, whether it's Islamists, that all push the same stuff. These ideas, this rhetoric has been bouncing around the Arab world for decades. This is not new. But Americans are so ignorant to what happens with this ideology, to where it comes from, to how it's being injected into our discussion, how it's being injected into our society, that many of you are falling prey. And I will say you, because I hope that people listen to this and hear what I'm saying. This is something I'm very genuinely deeply concerned about, that this leads nowhere good. We've talked about it being dangerous, but what this does is it paves the ground for people who have genuine malintent towards the Jewish people, towards Israel, and by extension, Christians. And that's one of the worst parts of this whole shakedown, right? Is that they get you to come in thinking that the Jews or the state of Israel is to blame for this. But if you are a Christian, these same people who are behind this ideology, they're after you too. Like, we see that happening all over the country, where Christians are being genocided, Christians are being murdered en masse. And you need to be very, very careful about anyone who tries to make Israel, the country, out to be anything other than God's chosen people, anything out to be the Jewish state of Israel. You cannot hate Israel and also support the Jews. And I will get off my soapbox there, but it's a distinction that has to be made, and it's something that people have to be aware of. So with that, also, heritage needs a whooping or something. I don't know. For the life of me, I don't understand the unforced error of jumping out and embracing this guy when no one even asked. It's not like they were put on the spot about this. They just, in the middle of all of this drama, jump out there and they're like, actually, we totes love Tucker. Okay, no one asked you. But let's just make all this so much worse that now we have and I think heritage is emblematic of mainstream conservatism. And so we have now mainstream conservatism is saying that they embrace this guy and all of these terrible things that he is doing to Jews and also to Christians who support Jews, because that's exactly what it is. When he says Christian Zionism, that's exactly what he means. Christians who support the state of Israel, Christians who support the Jewish people, that's exactly what he's talking about. Just in case you're not clear there, that's what he means.
Yeah, I mean, and the reaction from the mainstream media and the Democrats was entirely predictable. I mean, this is an absolute electoral gift for them. I
For sure.
think it was the New York Times ran an opinion piece, but by one of their regular contributors, not like an op-ed sort of thing, about with a picture of Nick Fuentes looking like James Dean, okay?
Right.
Obviously, a highly produced photo to make him look cool and talking about how he's the successor to Charlie Kirk,
Who
okay?
Charlie Kirk
Uh,
could not stand, and that's
Oh,
the
yeah. I mean,
thing,
Nick
like
Fuentes bragged that he
yeah,
was gonna destroy TPUSA, like a month before
yes,
Charlie was shot, okay?
yeah,
Um, Nick Fuentes has used a great deal of profanity, and really was Charlie Kirk's enemy. But my point is, Tucker and Fuentes are now going to be painted as the face of the Republican Party. Every
yep,
Republican candidate's going to have to deal with that. Ro Khanna, the Democrat, not sure what his title is. I mean, he's a congressman. I'm not sure if he's like majority whip or what his title is, but he's one of the key people is tweeting out about this. They are going to wrap this Tucker Carlson embrace of Nick Fuentes and the Heritage Foundation embrace of Tucker, okay, around our proverbial necks in 2026 and 2028. They have handed them a gift. And, I've seen a lot of people on the internet, including people we know and used to respect, say, oh, he's just a podcaster. Why are you so upset about a podcaster interviewing somebody? This podcaster had a featured speaking spot at the Republican National Convention in
yep,
2024. I don't think he was the keynote speaker, but he was one of them. He sat in the box with the Trump family and with Vance and Vance's wife. Okay. This is a guy who can pick up the phone and call Donald Trump. This is the guy who's very close to JD Vance, which is a whole nother issue. So
yep,
this is not just a podcaster. Okay. This is a guy who is going to bring a great deal of electoral destruction on us. And now let's talk about JD Vance. I have absolutely nothing against JD Vance. I think he's done an excellent job. He has exceeded expectations both as a VP candidate and as a VP. Uh,
yes,
I have doubts unrelated to Tucker, unrelated to Israel, unrelated to any of this stuff, whether he is viable as a winning national electoral candidate at the top of the ticket. You've got to
right,
have a certain it factor to be that. I'm not sure he has it personality wise, but that's a separate issue. But Tucker is also damaging his dear friend, JD Vance. JD
oh,
Vance
for sure,
reportedly only got the Senate nod or won the Senate in Ohio because Trump backed him. And why did Trump back him? At the urging of Tucker Carlson. He only
yep,
got the VP nod. Why did Trump pick JD Vance? Only because at Tucker's urging. This is what's, I think, widely accepted as true. So, JD Vance's career, he was somebody who, as a Senate candidate, did not perform particularly well. I mean, the Republicans had to throw a lot of money into that campaign, and Trump had to work really hard to get JD Vance to both win the primary and then win the general election. And he ran way behind Trump in that state. Okay. So I'm not sure he's got what it takes, unrelated to Israel or Tucker, to win a national election. But he's going to have to deal with the Tucker issue. Okay. I've been urging him.
yep,
I have no idea if he even knows who I am. Probably not. I've got a small Twitter account, but other people are noticing and picking up on the theme. We're entitled to transparency. What is your relationship with Tucker? Just tell us what it is, and then we can make an informed decision. But he seems to be hiding from the issue. So this is going to hurt him because if he is aligned with Tucker, there'll be a certain percentage of voters who won't vote for him. He may make it to the nomination anyway. In fact, he probably will. But this is an issue. So Tucker has not only created chaos within the Republican MAGA movement, within the future of our elections, he's creating a lot of problems for his dear friend, JD Vance, that remain unanswered and will have to be eventually answered.
right. And now, I mean, and like you said, all I'm thinking is on the campaign trail, everyone's going to be asked about what they think about Tucker and this instead of being asked about actual issues, because now we're in this guilty by association thing. as a result of all of this. And I think ultimately, though, if anyone benefits from it, it would be Rubio if he aspires to run after this. I don't know if he'll have the energy after like being serving 4 cabinet
Or
positions for an
jobs.
entire, yeah,
Well,
for an entire session.
this gets into another topic, and there is a movement to defend Tucker that I believe
Yeah,
is actually the defense of Vance. So, among the many
yeah,
lines that we're hearing in what I call the Protect Tucker movement, is one: what are you complaining about a podcaster interviewing somebody? Are we really going to devote all our energy to who podcasters can interview? I've addressed that. He's not just a podcaster, he's a major
right.
political figure in the Republican Party. But they're also saying this is just an attempt to attack J.D. Vance. Okay. There's some pretty prominent people who have said this is really about getting Vance. They have it backwards. I believe the reason people are so vigorously defending Tucker is that they know his relationship will hurt Vance. Okay. They
Yeah.
know it will. And so if they can protect Tucker, if they can keep Tucker as a leader in the Republican Party, even though he's not technically a politician, uh, that it will protect Vance. So this is going to get worse before it gets better. And there have been, it's causing a lot of other fissures in the broader conservative movement. Megyn Kelly has
Right.
defended Tucker. She says, well, he's my friend. I'm not going to. Well, what is this? These people all have this allegiance to Tucker. It's okay in your personal capacity to have somebody as a friend. But
Yeah.
if you're going to hold yourself out there as a tough as nails journalist, and Megyn Kelly can really give it to people when she wants to, okay.
Right.
But you're going to softball it with Tucker. You're going to softball it with Candace. She refuses to criticize Candace because Candace is
She's
a young mother.
complimentary of her. Yeah, but
Complimentary of her.
she's very complimentary of Candace, actually.
And so this he has created complete chaos everywhere. It's just absolutely amazing. And it's all because some people have this bizarre personal allegiance to him. Again, it's okay to be his friend. But if you're the president of Heritage, you have bigger obligations. And if you can't separate your personal allegiance to Tucker Carlson from what's in the best interest of your institution, you shouldn't be in that job. You should quit.
I
You're
completely
entitled to
agree. Completely.
you're entitled to your personal allegiance. But you know what? The board of trustees, the trustees of Heritage, should be holding you to account for what you've done to the institution. And if it's and putting your personal allegiance and friendship with somebody ahead. But there's something very bizarre going on here. There's something we don't know. Why are all these people, you don't have to attack the guy, but why are you staking your organization on him? None of this makes any sense. I'm not really sure what is going on behind the scenes, but I think it may have a lot to do with jockeying over the VP and the presidential nomination and the role of J.D. Vance. That there are a lot
Yeah.
of people who are very afraid if Tucker goes down, and I don't mean go down in a physical way, but if he is essentially becomes
Kicked to the
toxic
curb.
within the party,
Yeah.
if he becomes toxic within the party, if he, does if it's done to him what he's trying to do to other people all the time, and that's going to hurt JD Vance because their careers are intertwined. Tucker's base was JD Vance's support base. Now JD Vance has over not quite a year as vice president, but combine it with the year of running for vice president, he's got a legitimate shot at getting the nomination. A lot will depend what Trump does if he endorses anybody. But what I'm saying is something weird is going on here. I never
Yeah.
imagined one person could cause so much fighting and destruction and chaos at almost every level of the Republican Party. And I think the reason is how powerful he was with his support base and his public persona. I don't know how much longer that support base and public persona is going to hold up.
No, I completely agree. I mean, because the thing is, we have to think back to the Obama years, right? We were right to be concerned about Obama's affiliation with Bill Ayers. We were right to be concerned about Obama sitting under Jeremiah Wright and listening to everything that he espoused for how many years. So we get to do the same thing with our own candidates. No matter how wonderful they've been for us, we need to be critical of and cautious of who's in their ear for many reasons, and especially given everything that we've outlined so far. What I'm still unclear of here is what is Tucker's end game. To me, this looks like a very concerted effort. It looks calculated. Um, it's what it looks like. It's just, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the end game is here. Outside of what we're seeing, which is just to completely upend everything at a time when things were actually going well for us as a coalition, at a time where, especially after Charlie Kirk was murdered in front of the entire world on camera, um, we're coalescing and the movement is crystallizing in ways that we have never seen before. And all of the sudden this comes out to blow it to smithereens. I mean, maybe that is the end game right there. Maybe we're watching it play out in real time.
No, I think the end game is the takeover, is the post-Trump Republican Party. And I think that is the end game, is that Tucker wants his people, including J.D. Vance, to be the party when Trump is off the scene. Trump's not going to be there forever. I hope he lives to 100, but he's not going to be there forever. And he's,
He does eat
magnetic.
McDonald's a lot. And as
Yeah,
far as my kids are concerned, that's
right.
not food. So, we'll see.
He very magnanimously has agreed not to run for a third term. That was very
Right.
big of him. Okay.
Yeah.
But, so basically Trump, you know, hate the term lamed up, but after next election, midterms, he's essentially a lame duck. And Tucker and all these people, the American Conservative, where Tucker is, I just found out now, it makes perfect sense. The American Conservative magazine, which was Pat Buchanan's magazine, is Tucker is on the advisory board. Okay. And I knew something was up because the guy who now is the editor in chief or executive director, whatever his name is a real Tucker type. He's a really strange guy. Maybe we'll have another show devoted to him. Very strange guy, very nasty guy, very anti-Israel guy. And I think they're giving the game away. Their lead article right now, I just saw this on Twitter, is J.D. Vance can lead a post-Israel America. Okay, that is their game. They are so obsessed with Israel, it's caused brain rot in them. They can't get away from it, and so they're looking at, once Trump no longer is on the scene. Trump, who's very pro-Israel, whose daughter converted to Judaism, who has always been a friend of the Jewish community, who grew up in New York in kind of that community. What is the GOP going to be when Trump is no longer in control? And they want it to be the party of J.D. Vance. They want it to be the party of Matt Gaetz. They want it to be the party of Marjorie Taylor Greene, of Massey, I forget his first name, basically an isolationist anti-Israel party. That's the end game. The American Conservative totally gave it away. That's what they're looking for. Israel has rotted their brains. It's the only thing they seem to be able to focus on. I know why they focus on it, because they're trying to tap into an anti-Jewish base. They're trying to tap into resentments. They're trying to tap into what they keep touting as the young conservative men who have turned on Israel. That's who they're trying to play to. So there's nothing noble here. It's not that they love the United States so much. They view, Jew baiting as an electoral tactic, and that's what they want the Republican Party to turn into, which is basically the left wing of the Democratic Party. They're really the so-called horseshoe theory. And so that's what the game plan is. The American Conservative gave it away. American Conservative is Tucker's magazine. He's on the advisory board. I mean, I don't think he owns it, but he's on the advisory board. They're ideologically aligned with him. And that's the game. The end game is an anti-Israel GOP. And why they need that so much, I don't know. But that's what their end game is. And I think that needs to be exposed, because if that is J.D. Vance's end game, we need to know it. We're entitled to know it as voters. Doesn't mean a little transparency would go a long way. But this issue, if on the unlikely chance J.D. Vance is watching now, is there are a lot of people out there who really want to support you. They really think you're doing a good job. They're in many ways aligned with you, But there's this open, festering question, which is your relationship with Tucker Carlson and the anti-Israel wing of the Republican Party, personified in the American Conservative magazine. And we're entitled to know, but it's not going to go away. I can guarantee you it's not going to go away. Please let us know. Please be transparent. You may gain some supporters that way. You may lose some, but the worst thing, in my estimation, you can do is leave this lingering.
I completely agree. And I mean, if that's where this is going, we need to know now so we can deal accordingly. But here's the deal, y'all. Anyone who seeks to exploit your dissatisfaction, your vulnerabilities, things that are frustrating you in life is not your friend. If they're going to exploit you for political gain, they're not your friend, and they're not right. They're not right. There is what we're dealing with now, and this is probably a separate discussion. I won't go too deep into it, but it's worth mentioning, is that you do have entire generations of young men who were disenfranchised by modern feminism. They were told they don't matter. They were told that everything about them is wrong and toxic, that the way that men are designed, the things that they need to do with themselves, whatever, that everything about that is wrong. And it has left many very frustrated, many feeling as though they've been kicked out of their own country. They have no one else to relate to. I am 100% sympathetic to that, because it's not something that should have happened. But the solution to that is not to then take that resentment and hate other people. You have to find a way to reintroduce these people and to give them what they need. I have a son and a daughter, and I can tell you that they need very, very different things, because boys are wired very differently. And and I will just leave it at that. But all of that to say, if you know anyone who is flirting with this kind of ideology, if you know anyone who has bought into this, the solution is not, like I just said, to take that resentment and turn it into hatred. We have to find a counterbalance to this. I think many people, at least in my generation, in my circles, and some of the generations immediately behind me, are actively working to address this, but it's not going to happen overnight. And we're going to, if we are not careful and cautious, and if we're not proactive, we will lose some of these young men who otherwise have so much to contribute. They have nowhere to put it, because they've been told for so long that, they really shouldn't even exist, and their existence is a problem, not just, for themselves, but to broader culture. So it's something I find tremendously concerning. Of course, it's a complicated issue, but um, I what a mess, just as we were all grieving and getting to the other side of this thing with Charlie Kirk and seeing amazing things happening, that this comes along. It's not necessarily unexpected, but it's very frustrating to see. And I hope we're able to get to the bottom of this. It's my prayer that we get some sunlight on this and some transparency and all of this sooner rather than later, so we're not caught flat-footed. But anyone that comes in seeking to divide something, that's also an indicator that what they're doing is wrong. Anyone coming in, and it's not like they're bringing correction to a movement or correction to thinking. What they're purposely trying to do is to split people into groups, and then what they're doing there is trying to pit these groups against one another. That's Alinskyism. That's something we've talked about a lot. It's a way of pitting people against each other in order to exert control. And that's not something we want any part of. So I know we could continue to talk about this, but I do at least want to talk about the New York City mayoral race and that whole dumpster fire. And I just want to put this out there now. If you are from New York and you're considering moving to Texas, we are full. But I'm sure Oklahoma would love to take you. And Louisiana is really nice. We live about an hour and a half from, we're not away from Louisiana, and it's lovely, and the food there is amazing, and I can teach you all the Cajun slang you need to know to settle there appropriately. But we are full, and none of y'all know how to drive. So except for New York's finest. I think, what was it, the Houston Police Union or some group there was actively recruiting New York cops, and they're wonderful people. They're welcome down here, but no one else. That's it. So
yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be moving to Rhode Island, so I'm not worried.
you don't have to worry about it.
But Florida, I'm very concerned about Florida. because it could be like Guam, according to that congressman from way back,
It could tip
Democrat.
over.
It could tip over. If too many New Yorkers flee to Florida, it might tip over. Uh, but yeah, I mean, so the Mamdani win, people are like, how did we get to a place that a socialist slash communist jihadist is winning in New York City? And, I think my typical response is look at our education system. So much comes back to it. I mean, there are other factors, that's not the only one, but the education system, uh, particularly in places like New York, are producing students who hate our country. They may not say, "Oh, I hate the country," but they view us as uniquely evil because that's what they've been taught. That we had slavery. Well, so did most of the world, but they're not taught that. In fact, we and the British are the ones who ended slavery. Okay, first. Okay, it exists in the Arab world to this day, but they're never taught that. They're taught that we are uniquely evil, that our economic system is uniquely unfair. All of these things. They're not taught the other side. I mean, I studied very intensively the Soviet Union when I was in college. It was my main focus in college. I lived in the Soviet Union and studied there in Moscow. I traveled extensively throughout the country. Anybody who thinks that was an egalitarian society is completely wrong. But your access to the trappings of wealth in communist country was your position in the party, as opposed to whether you built a business, whether you invented the next best thing, and those sort of things. So anybody who thinks that those are fair and egalitarian societies is completely wrong. Okay, um, and there's that great Margaret Thatcher speech that's been tweeted a lot, where she takes her fingers. She said, the socialists, they're only concerned with this. They want it, but they want to bring it all down. So they want equality at the bottom because they're so concerned about somebody having more. And it's a great speech of hers in the British Parliament. Um, and that's what it is. And so we've raised multiple generations to believe that we're an evil society. Capitalism is part of the problem. Colonialism in the form of Israel is the problem in the world. That's why Israel centers so much in what they do. And it's a very hard situation because it's in many ways so far gone. Obviously, it's something we have focused on a lot at our Critical Race website, at the blog before we had that website. The education system has produced an electorate that's willing to um, elect a socialist jihadist in the largest city in the country. That's not the only factor that provides a welcoming environment, but there are other factors, of course. One of which is that cities like New York have become basically unaffordable. Okay, that uh, people can't buy a house, they can't settle down, they can't afford kids. Of course, we have a culture that encourages people not to have kids. That's part of it. So, but I saw something, an article, and I like the term that was used on it. I wish I could remember it now. I just texted it to a family member. It was about the Park Slope, Brooklyn, which is kind of a, you know, well-to-do section of the city, not ritzy, but upwardly mobile professionals, and they're talking about the downwardly mobile professionals and how that was. And I do want to get this quote for you while we're on. Uh, the downwardly mobile professionals. Okay. These are kids who were taught if you get into Yale, if you get into Cornell, you're set for life. And they get out into the real world and no one gives a damn. Okay. And they're not rising. They really have no skills that anybody needs because you were, what's the phrase? I forget her name. Used to use feminist dance studies majors,
Yes.
Christina Hoff Summer or Hoff Summers used to say, like, if you want to improve your career income, major in electrical engineering, not feminist dance therapy or something like that.
Well,
And so you,
even so, I went to Texas A&M, and we had what we would call all of the silly majors was they were all summarily looped into underwater basket weaving. That's what we called it. Like you may as well major in underwater basket weaving, because that's what are you going to do with it? Nothing,
you do have a disaffected class of people who are white urban professionals who are going no place. They've been brought up to think they can spend $7 on lattes for the rest of their life. They don't save money. They are in many ways the opposite of what Charlie Kirk was advocating, who advocated, you know,
Yep.
get a career, build yourself, build a family, all these sort of things. It's really, and you do have a lot of disaffected people. And what is the answer they're looking for? The answer they're looking for is socialism, because it will save them from the downwardly mobile professional careers they have spent their life creating. And they've got student debt. I mean, their anger should not be directed at Israel. It should not be directed at, billionaires who created enormous wealth for a lot of people by creating companies
Right.
like Amazon that didn't exist, okay? And now employs how
And it
many,
started off as just books. It
yeah,
started off as
exactly.
just books. Yeah.
Or a computer company that started in the parents' garage, all of those sort of, which I think was Microsoft, I think, or one of them,
Yeah.
or was it Dell, or both of them, so rather than focusing on the guy who created hundreds of thousands of jobs for people, okay, they should be focusing on what higher ed did to them. What This is not examined enough. What higher ed did by creating multiple generations of indebtedness for student loans is, in
Yeah.
my view, criminal. May not violate the criminal code, but it's criminal. And none of the
Right.
anger gets directed towards them. By creating a culture that says you must go to college and you must take out loans to go to college, and we're going to put you in majors will not allow you to pay off those loans anytime in your near lifetime. I think most of the blame for that downwardly mobile professional anger needs to be directed at the school administrators, who created the higher ed institutions who created this. And I don't know how we get out of that. And I do feel, a lot of people say that I have no sympathy. You were an adult, you took out a loan. I understand that, and legally that's true. But I think we need to understand we have a lot of people, in the 20 to 30, 20 to almost 40 age bracket who were sold a bill
Mhm.
of goods by higher ed, and they were sold a defective product, and they were sold a product that um, has now caused them to be indebted. And while
Right.
I don't know that the answer is saying, okay, the taxpayer will now foot the bill, but direct your anger where it's deserved, which is the institutions that ripped you off, not at the
Right.
storekeeper down the street who you think is making too much money.
No, I completely agree. I mean, one of the things, if you have small children, and my children are currently small, you are probably very well versed in dealing with the fairness debate and who has more, you know? And to me, this is a very juvenile way of thinking. We had a situation just Tuesday at one of our homeschool groups. We do classical education. We get together, they learn all kinds of things. They sing songs about, the British conquest in India and all kinds of, like, it's amazing. Parts of the sun. Anyway, that aside, um, in my daughter's class, she's a little bit older. They do a whole review session. She wins all the candy. She has a memory that's like just a steel cage. Everything goes in, nothing leaves. It stays there. So she comes out with all the candy. Well, my son this week just decided he would rather swing and he didn't want to do some of the work. So he comes out of his class with one candy and then starts crying about the fairness of it, right? To me, this is a wonderful learning opportunity. Well, she worked really hard. That's why she has more than you. Maybe next week, if you would like more candy, you should work harder. And it should just be that simple, right? That these things aren't just given to you. And to think that you deserve what other people have just because they have it, we call it entitlement mentality. It's, it's called many different things, is very childish thinking that at some point you need to let go of. Everything we have, everything we do is ultimately a product of our own choosing, but kids aren't being taught this. They're also not being parented. I think you had mentioned the other day about how we have all of these generations now that have been raised by social media. And social media is not real. You know how many times I've seen people, these influencers that have a gorgeous picture of something in their home that they have decorated for a season or whatever. Behind the scenes is a hot mess, kind of like the behind the scenes right now, right? So it's not real, but the thing is people don't consider that. There's just so many different things that we have let go where parents, it wasn't just parents who were involved in parenting. It was the neighborhood that was involved in parenting. It was everyone that knew you and knew your parents was involved in parenting, and they would tell your parents if you misbehaved, which is one of the things I love about our homeschool co-op. Someone misbehaves, I'm like, I'm going to go get your mom. I'm going to tell them what you did. There's instant accountability for that so that these things can be addressed real time. And these kids, like you said, I mean, this is another vein here too. It's like they want to blame Israel for the exact same thing that they're doing with this projection. You have the Muslim world that's actively trying to conquer the West. They consider their win in New York City actually to be a conquering feat, and something that they're very proud of. They're actively trying to conquer Europe. We see that. They talk about this. They've been talking about it for decades. They brag about it. But kids aren't taught this. They're very, very good about hiding the agenda and everything that they're doing. Meanwhile, this is the end result. And as you mentioned, I think there is tremendous sympathy, or there should be sympathy, for these generations. I mean, where I am in my life, I can't easily do some of the things that my parents were able to because the economic situation at the time was very different. The social situation was also very different. And I think that there's a lot of frustration there between these generations, but ultimately it's something that has to be addressed for the problems that exist. But again, much like we were talking about with this whole Tucker issue, it's the wrong people being blamed. It's the wrong issues being blamed, and none of them help to address the problems. None of them help to address the frustrations. And so now we have a jihadi mayor of the largest city in the country, which is going to be really interesting because the guy has never worked a day in his life. He's never had a job. And I'm curious to see how his agenda bumps into laws and limitations as well. But man, my heart goes out to New York City. I mean, I know it's been on a downward spiral for a long time, but this is 100% a product of our education system. It's something that concerns me about upcoming elections too. Our current economic state, I understand what Trump is trying to accomplish in bringing manufacturing back. The kids and I just had this conversation the other day. How about when I was a kid, we went to Walmart, everything said made in America. And it was actually one of their claims to fame, right? That everything was made in America, and you'd have like the little sticker with the American flag on it. And that's really what they're trying to make happen again economically, but that there's going to be pain involved in that. But we have so little economic education now that I'm not sure that's a winning strategy, because this is not going to be resolved by the next presidential election cycle. And in the meantime, a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people are hurting. I know that our bills, it's like everything continues just to increase and increase and increase and increase. Cost of food, cost of goods, cost of everything has gone up. And everyone's raised their prices as a result. But again, when you have no economic knowledge and no economic education, I don't know how you speak to voters in a way that allows them to understand what we're dealing with and how it's trying to be remedied, because those are things that we did entrust the public education to teach our children, and they have not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough election season coming up, and I'm sure we will cover it and have a lot more sessions about that. I'd like to get into that at some point.
For sure. And I know we had wanted to cover the other elections, but we'll have to do that another day, because I think we both had quite a bit to say about about some of the other, especially. It's been stewing and brewing for a while, and I just had some things I guess apparently needed to get off my chest. So,
Yeah.
And y'all got to listen, hopefully. So, but unless you have anything else, I think that concludes episode 32. And you can find this episode and more, all the links that we have available at legalinsurrection.com/32. Be sure to like and share and send this to anyone else, especially if you think they may benefit from some of the discussion we were able to have and share with you today. We definitely appreciate it. And we will see you next time.